Thank you very much. It's so great that the person sitting next to me gives me some applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's my pleasure to rise in the House today to give my response to the throne speech. Before I get into the meat of my thoughts, as well as the thoughts of the people I represent in Nelson Creston, I do want to pay a bit of a tribute myself, as we did in the throne speech, but I would like to acknowledge some of the people who have served the communities in Nelson Creston as local government representatives, and they are retiring. They are not running for re-election right now this fall, and they have served our communities incredibly well. In Creston, we have Scott Veach, Judy Gadecki, and Jerry Schmaltz, who are all stepping down this year. Scott served 1 term, and Judy and Jerry have served, I believe they served a total of 3 terms. Honourable Speaker, and their commitment to the community of Creston, and indeed to the entire Creston Valley and to the entire Kootenay region, cannot be questioned whatsoever. Also, in Caslow, we have Maureen Leithwood. Molly Leithwood is retiring. She's been on council for, I believe, as well as 3 terms. And she's also a teacher in the region, and I've been able to speak to her class and see her dedication to children, not only in the classroom but also in her work as a member of the Village Council in Caslow. In Salmo, Ann Henderson is retiring after 4 terms as mayor. And she was first elected the same year I was, in 2002, when I was elected to Nelson City Council. She was elected to Salmo Village Council. I got to know her then and have known her ever since, and been able to watch the work that she's done in Salmo and the dedication that she has to that small community and the vibrancy of that community. Anne has done a tremendous amount of work, and one of the things I will highlight is the new health centre in Salmo. That was Anne's passion for quite some time, and I know that when that health centre was constructed and we cut the ribbon, a lot of the work there was owed to Anne. Jennifer Peel is also stepping down after her first term on council. I do hope that she comes back. She has a tremendous love for the village of Salmo, and that passion and that love was displayed every day that she was on council. And then we have some regional district directors who are retiring, Ron Mickel and Andy Shadrack, both serving their areas exceptionally well. And in Nelson, both Paula Kiss and Candice Batiki are stepping down after serving a term. Both came into council with an incredible passion for the environment, and over the last 3 years have shown the importance of speaking out for sustainable economic development, and have brought that perspective and established it very well on council. Now, there's 2 people that I want to specifically acknowledge that are good friends of mine, and I've known them for a very long time, and they are at complete opposite ends of the political spectrum, but are very good friends, and very good friends of mine as well. So first, I want to pay a special tribute to John Kettle, who's been the area director. I figured he would get some applause from members of all sides of the House. John Kettle has been a member of the RDCK. He's been chair of the RDCK and the representative for Area B. I believe since 2002. We were both elected at the same time. And that's when I first got to know John. I was much younger than him, and I'm happy to point that out. And John and I hit it off famously right from the beginning, despite him being very conservative and me being quite on the left side of the political spectrum. But we both had this deep passion for our region, and we shared that. And definitely, we always would say, if you're going to pick a fight with the Kootenays, don't pick it with John or I, because we're definitely ready for a good scrap to defend our territories and our region any day of the week. And John, despite any of our disagreements, we've always remained good friends, and have even put wagers on various elections, and John has always paid up. Donna MacDonald is someone who has been a rock in my life, both personally and politically. When I was first elected in 2002, Donna was a veteran city councillor in Nelson and was wonderful and patient with mentoring me. And I learned so much from her. And over the years, whether particularly in my personal life, when I had left Nelson and wanted to go back and I needed somebody to provide a landing pad for me to come back to Nelson, Donna and her husband Greg were there. And Donna has just been an incredible person for me personally, but most notably the community of Nelson, her tireless, hard-working, driven nature in the role as a city councillor for Nelson is unmatched. And she has earned this retirement, she's earned this rest, and I'm sure it won't be long. I think, Donna, you're going to get about 3 months before everybody starts asking you to sit on community boards. So I want to again just thank everybody who is retiring this year, and also thank everybody who has put their names forward in the upcoming municipal elections and local government elections. Just by standing for office and willing to put your name forward is a tremendous service to all of us and to our democratic structure, and we are all the better for them doing that. I'd also just take a moment to recognize some other people. I want to recognize my constituency assistants, Curtis Bendig and Lori Langill. And for the past year, a young woman named Jen Comer had worked in my office as well out of Creston. And these are three of the finest people that I have ever worked with in my life. They are just day in and day out serving the community and enjoy it as they go along. And it's truly inspirational, and I am motivated every day to know that I get to work with them. So I want to pay a special thank you to them, and as well to my husband Zach, who whenever we go out grocery shopping or go see theater or to the movies, will stand there patiently while I chat up with constituents, and understands that my job doesn't end at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and nor does it start at 9 in the morning, and it certainly means that evenings and weekends are work times as well. And I just want to also say thank you so much to all the volunteers in Nelson Creston who put their time and energy forward for the variety of projects and nonprofit services. It's because of them that our communities keep thriving. So coming back to what we're speaking to here today, though, Honourable Speaker, which is the speech from the throne. And the speaker before me, the Minister for Children and Family Development, called it decisive. There's no doubt that decisions were made in putting this speech from the throne together, Honourable Speaker. So in that sense, yes, it is decisive. That being said, I don't know if we can say that 5 pages is a fulsome direction for the province. So yes, a decision was made, and that decision was to limit everything that this province needs into 5 pages with essentially one topic. And we all know the letters of that topic, LNG. But what's interesting about what's in this 5 pages is also what's not in the 5 pages. What were the decisions made to be left out? Well, when it comes down to LNG, the conversation is short. The discussion is short and peripheral, lacking substance, Honourable Speaker. Here is the big banner item of this government with big promises before the election. We heard mention of 100,000 jobs, $100 million into a prosperity fund. Everything is going to be paid for. We're going to eliminate the PST. Big promises. We're going to have debt-free BC. That was on the side of the bus that went from community to community to community, making that promise in every place it stopped. Debt-free BC. But none of that was in this throne speech. We don't hear about the Prosperity Fund. We don't hear about eliminating debt. We don't hear about eliminating the PST. We don't hear about hundreds of thousands of jobs. What we hear about is that LNG is going to allow us to merely hold the line. So what happened? What happened between 2013, before the election, and today? What happened that the government has to pull back on all of its promises? And I mean, another member of this House was talking about, they were promising everything. Like, why didn't they just promise unicorns for everybody? They were so grand. So now maybe it's because we're back in the land of reality, and the government just simply isn't able to deliver. They say one thing and do another. They say something that sounds really great and really nice. It gives everybody hope, but they're not able to deliver. And that's exactly where we're at. And that's why this throne speech can only be 5 pages. Because it was supposed to be all about their big promise. And they can't even deliver. All they can offer now is to hold the line. That's not what people wanted. That's not what people said in the election. They wanted to see a better way forward for British Columbia. And instead, we get a government pulling back on everything it said it was going to do. So I also think it's important to mention about the economic sectors that are not mentioned in this speech from the throne. We're focusing on one sector and saying that it's going to do everything that we need it to do, that all these other opportunities are irrelevant, is what I'm hearing from this government. But let me tell you, Honourable Speaker, in my area, agriculture is not irrelevant. It is a core industry in the Creston Valley. It is an important industry all throughout the Kootenays. It's why we're able to eat a 100-mile diet. And in Cranbrook, it's only 50 miles, Creston Valley from Cranbrook, where you can eat everything, almost anything. You have your grains, you have dairy, you have meat, poultry, you have vegetables. Mr. Speaker, I was just in one of the nurseries and greenhouses in the Creston Valley last spring, and what were they growing there? Oranges. So we're even growing citrus fruit in the Creston Valley. This is an important economic sector for our region. And all it gets in this throne speech is one word. One word. That's all it got. So for the Harrises, who have a dairy farm and who are expanding the value-added portion of that farm, not just by producing cheese and bottling milk, but also doing agritourism, one word doesn't help what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to contribute to our local economy and to BC's economy. And after Bill 24 with last session, they needed some reassurance from this government that they were going to have stability in their economic sector. And they didn't get that. They got one word. Well, at least they got an honorable mention, because tourism and the arts, two other very important economic sectors for Nelson Creston didn't even get one word. It's like they don't even exist, according to this throne speech. What happened to one of the most important sectors in our province? Tourism. And what makes tourism so successful in many places like Nelson is the arts. We know that for every tax dollar that goes into the arts, $1.36 comes back to BC coffers. We're making money when we invest in the arts, and we know that in the city of Nelson. We see that regularly. We see that regularly in the village of Caslow. Just about a week ago, I was at the 40th anniversary for the Langham Cultural Centre, where we saw people, the story of people coming together 40 years ago to renovate a building that had literally fallen apart and was mostly inhabited by pack rats. And now it is this beautiful cultural center, a beautiful theater that is used regularly. It houses the museum of Japanese Canadians who survived the internment in that area. In fact, that very building is where many Japanese Canadians were interned during World War II. And their story is told at this cultural center. And if we had taken the time to talk about how important that was in the throne speech, maybe, I don't know, a 6th page to the throne speech. If we had taken the time to talk about how important the arts and tourism is to the BC economy, we would have been able to acknowledge and set an appropriate agenda to build that sector. Because it's also one of the highest job-creating sectors in the province. So if this government's going to promise jobs, why not go to talk about and support and work with the sector that houses most of the jobs and the highest job creation? Again, a decision to ignore. That's the decisiveness that was earlier described as this throne speech. Improving health services for seniors, that wasn't in this throne speech. The only mention of education was around the labor dispute. The necessary resources in the classroom, long-term vision, that wasn't there. These are the basic things that people come to expect from government. And yet, in these 5 pages, very little mention and nothing mentioned on healthcare. Perhaps if we had expanded it to maybe 7 pages, I mean, Honourable Speaker, we used to make note that something of 10 pages was a small, thin speech from the throne, a thin agenda for government. And here we are at 5 pages, half that. Talk about thin agenda now. I mean, one whole page is devoted to just ramblings about leadership. Right? Like, they could have taken that part out and started talking about the real services that British Columbians need in their communities, the healthcare services, the social services, the long-term care facilities, housing. The list goes on, Honourable Speaker, and one of the things I would have really liked to have heard about from this throne speech is what's going on with the Ministry of Social Development and what's happening for people living in poverty. I would have been the first person to praise this government if in this throne speech there was a conversation, if there was a commitment about a poverty reduction plan. I've put forward legislation in this House, poverty reduction and economic inclusion, so that our economy benefits everyone. But why wasn't that in this throne speech? Why was there no mention of that? Well, maybe it's because every time we hear about poverty from the Liberals, it's in the frame of exactly what the Minister for, it's always in the frame of we have to be able to afford these things. So it means we have to have a strong economy. When we have a strong economy, we'll be able to do poverty reduction. When we have a strong economy, we'll be able to raise income assistance rates. When we have a strong economy, we'll be able to give kids their money back. When we have a strong economy, we'll be able to do X, Y, and Z to address poverty. But here's the fact of the matter, Honourable Speaker, is that it doesn't matter what the status of the economy is, this government does nothing when it comes to reducing poverty. Poverty reduction is not a partisan issue. The first province to have a poverty reduction plan was one with a Liberal government. The second province was Newfoundland with a Conservative government. Governments, regardless of political stripes, have started doing poverty reduction plans, meaningful poverty reduction plans, not just connecting people with the existing community services in their regions. I mean, goodness, Honourable Speaker, most constituency offices of MLAs already do that. Right? These poverty reduction plans look at the policies that government has and identifies the ones that exacerbate poverty rather than alleviate poverty. So if we had a poverty reduction plan in this province that required government to do just that, I have no doubt one of the first policies that they would identify is the clawing back of child support payments from children simply because their parents receive income supports like disability. We have the highest child poverty in the country, not just last year, but for 11 years. We have the highest overall poverty in the country for 13 years. 50% of single mothers and their children are living in poverty. You would think that would spur any government to action, regardless of their political stripe. But that has not happened here in British Columbia. What we see is more rhetoric, more talk. We'll get to that when the economy is strong. We'll get to that when we have all this money from LNG. Oh, by the way, let me backtrack on that one, says the government, because LNG is now only going to let us hold the line, so forget all those promises. So therefore, will government ever address poverty? It's high time they did. It's long past due. But that was missing from this speech from the throne. And what's a shame is when the Minister of Children and Families says you can't spend more than you have, that is a philosophy she lives by, that's a philosophy that government lives by, and that's what British Columbians want government to live by. And that's a fair comment. But the reality is that families who are living on income assistance, who are living in poverty, regularly have to go into debt, credit card debt, or worse, just so they can put food on the table. So every time this government claws back $300 from a family, they take away that child support payment every month, that they take that away. That family has to struggle. That family has to look at yet using MasterCard or Visa, if they can get a credit card, to pay for groceries and not be able to pay it off at the end of the month. Not because they're lazy and they don't want to, but because the government is taking away their child support payments. So while this government practices or preaches you can't spend more than you have, it certainly sets up British Columbians to not be able to practice that. It sets British Columbians up to have to go into personal debt. And I'm talking about here just about families who are living so below the poverty line, who are struggling every month just to put food on the table, but that number is growing. The middle class is starting to feel the pinch as well. Every time MSP grows up, ICBC rates, BC Hydro going up, affordability is starting to become #1 issue. My generation, Dr. Paul Kershaw has pointed out, my generation is Generation Squeeze. We have less disposable income than our parents did because of the rate of inflation, wages not keeping pace, housing costs going up. All of these things that my generation contends with, child care costs, elder care costs, we have less disposable income than past generations. And it shows. When I talk to my peers, #1 issue, affordability, struggling to pay the bills, working often 2, 3 part-time jobs because it's really difficult to get a full-time job, not having any time to volunteer in the community. These are the things that my generation struggles with. And that wasn't really in the throne speech. What was in the throne speech were broken promises. Honourable Speaker, I also would have liked to have heard why in the Ministry of Social Development do we see changes, reduced hours at 10 offices, 11-minute cutoff to phone calls. More and more the ministry is moving towards self-serve is what they call it. So if people want to make an application, they have to do it online. Their computer literacy is irrelevant. They have to do it online. If they need any assistance, there's a 1-800 number for them to call. But don't talk for more than 11 minutes because you'll be cut off. And in Nelson, if you need to go to the Income Assistance Office at 9 a.m. on a Monday, forget about it. It's closed. It's also closed in 100 Mile House, in Oliver, in Prince Rupert, Smithers, Trail, Grand Forks, Merritt, Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, and in the Premier's own backyard of West Kelowna. They've all reduced their hours, 1 to 4 in the afternoons, and on check issue day, they'll be open in the morning, once a month. So while the ministry is trying to, I presume, save a buck, it's also denying human face-to-face service for some of the most marginalized people in our communities. People who struggle with literacy. People who don't know how to use a computer. People who don't have a phone and then are told to go and make a phone call. These are the issues that are impacting British Columbians every single day. And in 5 pages of a throne speech, there just wasn't room, it seems. Well, I call on this government to make room for British Columbians. Put them on the agenda. That's why we're here. We're here to serve them. And they need to be first and foremost in our mind. Not just 3 letters, LNG, but rather all British Columbians deserve the attention of this House. Thank you very much.